welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel, brought to you by Red Heart Yarns. In this video, I will show you how to make the Brighten My Day wrap by Nancy Thomas. This is a really wonderful wrap project made up of garter stitch, and it uses one ball of Red Heart Super Saver solid and one ball of Red Heart Super Saver stripes. This is a free pattern available over on redheart.com. You can find a link right down there in the video description box below, along with the materials list. And while you're down there, please smash that like button, as my kids say. Go ahead and get your free pattern and gather your materials. Join me back here and we'll get started on this really great wrap. When you're making this wrap, it's important that you use two contrasting colors. Nancy Thomas suggests that you use a black as the solid color and then the stripes for your striping color, obviously. Because the black is difficult for you to see on video, I'm going to use a white so that way you can see the contrast of the two colors. But in reality, you can use any two colors you want as long as they're contrasting, so that way the striping of the wrap will be visible. Because we're working in garter stitch, I like to do a long tail cast on, so that way my very first stitches are working into the back side of a knit. So we want to make sure we have enough yarn in our tail to make up the 5 stitches we need to cast on. So I'm just making sure I have enough yarn for my tail. I'll place my tail in the palm of my hand, take my working yarn, wrap it around my forefinger and middle finger, and when I come back up, I cross over. I rotate my hand around, I go underneath the front loop, grab the back loop, and off, and I have a slip knot. I place that slip knot directly onto my needle, and I'm using a size 10, which is a 6mm needle today, and I'm using straights. Now, you absolutely could use circular needles to accommodate the number of stitches you eventually will have for this wrap. It's totally up to you, but I am demonstrating on straight needles today. Once you place the slip knot on your needle, we will do the long tail cast on. Make sure the tail of the yarn is towards the left, the working yarn is towards the right. You want to take your thumb and put it underneath the tail, take your finger and put it underneath the working yarn. You'll grab the outside legs of that yarn and you get a piece like this. It looks like a slingshot. Once you're in the slingshot position, you're ready to do the long tail cast on. Take your needle, go to the palm of your hand at the bottom of your thumb, go up your thumb, swivel to the tip of your finger, go down your finger. You have this nice window right here. Take your needle and swivel through the window and let the yarn fall off your thumb. Once you pull your tails, you have a nice stitch resting on your needle next to that slip knot. If you want a more detailed instructions for how to do the long tail cast on, I'll put a link right there to a detailed video I did for the long tail cast on. But other than this, let's go ahead and get our 5 stitches cast on. And we have 5 right there. Once you cast on 5, the next row we will simply knit all the way across. So grab your other needle and you will simply knit. Make sure that you still only have 5 stitches on your needle and your purl bumps are down here below so you're not accidentally increasing. And you will simply knit 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. After you do that last stitch, we are now going to change to color B, and color B is our striping color. When we change to our color B, we are not going to cut our color A. We will keep our yarn attached throughout the entire wrap. But to change to color B, simply grab your new color, leave a tail that's at least 4 to 6 inches, and you are simply going to wrap your needle with the new yarn. And I know that looks really loose right there. I just got to pull my white just a little bit. Make sure I don't grab the tail. Grab my working yarn and continue on knitting using my color B. Okay. Now it is a little bit loose here to start, but I can just pull my tails and it will tighten up the end right down there. And for this, you're supposed to knit 2 rows with color B. So that was 1 row. I'm going to go ahead and pull my tails. You'll see where it tightens those up. See, it tightens them up nice and snug. I don't want them super tight, but just tighter than they were. And then as I carry on knitting this row, when I get to the end, it'll be time to switch to color A again. And this is where things begin to take shape. And the pun is intended because we are actually going to do shaping after this row. I just finished with my color B, so I go ahead and switch hands, right? So I put my work back in my left hand, and it's time for me to start using my color A again. So I will drop my color B, and I will pick up my color A. And I will continue on working with my color A. Now, you'll notice in the pattern that it says that at this point, this is the right side of your fabric. You can remember this is the right side by knowing that your tail is over here towards the left, if that's the way you like to remember things. I like to actually use a stitch marker. So I'm going to grab a stitch marker and I'm just going to place it right here into the front of my fabric, just so I know that that's the right side of my fabric. Now I can carry on, and the instructions say that on this side, on the very first row of my color A, I'm going to do an increase. I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm simply picking up my color A, and I'm just going to knit across. I want to make sure I'm not pulling too tightly from the last time I used my color A below, okay? So down here, I didn't pull too tight. I'm knitting over to where it's one stitch before the end, okay? So it's the last two stitches, and I'm going to work an increase. So this is where the shawl begins to take shape. I will go into the stitch, just like normal, yarn over, pop out the stitch, but I'm not going to let that stitch jump off yet. I'm going to extend my right hand needle, swivel it around, and go into the back leg of that same stitch. Yarn over, come out, and now I jump off. So now I have two stitches where there was only one. I go ahead and I knit my last stitch. I have to just plain old knit the next row. No shaping, nothing else is going on. So I'm just going to knit this row. And now I have 6 stitches because I just did that knit front and back increase. If you want more detailed instructions on the knit front and back, I will also put a link right up there in that little I button, so that way you can follow along and learn how to do the knit front and back a little bit more. Once I get to the end of the second row of the white, it's time to change colors again. So I simply drop the white, pick up my blue, and when I pick up my blue and come up here to work, I want to make sure I'm not pulling this too tight, otherwise that makes my edge too snug, okay? So I just simply pick up my blue and I start knitting with my blue and leave the white just hanging out there. And again, it's okay if that first stitch is a little bit loose, because all we do is when we pick up that white again, it'll tighten up that stitch and it'll make it nice and neat. Now you'll notice when I get to the blue, I'm not doing any shaping. And that's what's really cool about this particular pattern, is you only do shaping every 4th row. So it's easy to remember because you will do the shaping whenever you get back to the first row of color A. I will go ahead and I will knit all the way down using my color B without any shaping. I'm just simply knitting all the way down. And when I turn my work, it's time to pick up color A again. So I will pick up my color A, and you'll notice it's the first time I'm using color A. It's the first row for color A, so I know that it's an increase row. And so when I get down here to the last 2 stitches, I will work a knit front and back into that stitch. And I will continue doing this until I get a total of 60 stitches, okay? So let's go ahead and get down to that knit front and back. And it's always just going to be the second stitch, okay? Really easy. Really easy. So I'm into the stitch, yarn over, come out, extend, swivel around, go into the back leg of that same stitch, yarn over, come out the back leg. So now I have 2 stitches where there was 1, and then I carry on knitting. So now I have 7 stitches. Turn my work, and I'll go ahead and knit all the way back. When I get to the end of this row, my color B will be down there waiting for me. And on color B, remember, there's no shaping. So I simply just knit those 2 rows with color B, making it really easy. This is a really great social project. If you wanted to work at a coffee shop, or maybe you're going to go to a Stitch and Bitch and you want a project that, you don't have to think too much, this is a really great project for that. Let me go ahead and pick up color B one more time so you can see. I pick up color B, I just bring it up here to the top, and I will start knitting with color B. If you remember a little bit earlier, I said that you will repeat these 2 rows until you get up to 60 stitches. Once you get to 60 stitches, you will begin to decrease on the next A stripe row. So just like we did our increases with the first row of color A, we will begin our decreases on the first row of color A. So let me go ahead and get a couple rows in here, get some shaping done so you can see how this begins to take shape. And then I'll show you how to do the decreases. So that way you can see how it looks along the way that way. Once you get 60 stitches on your needle, it's time to begin the decrease shaping. Just as we increased on the first row of color A each time, we will decrease on the first row of color A each time. As you take a look down here, you can see, obviously I don't have 60 stitches, but down here is where we did our cast on. I've worked across this way, increasing on the first row every time I worked with my color A, which is the white. And you can see where it's beginning to increase my stitches down here along this edge. This edge up here is staying nice and straight. My colors are getting pulled up each row, and they look really nice and neat. And this is just, it's really good. So by the time you get 60 stitches, you're to the midpoint of your wrap, and it's time to decrease so that you can come back up. So we're working the wrap in this direction. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to begin my next row with my color A, and we're going to decrease down here at this edge. Okay, so I will pick up my work. It's time for me to switch to color A. Grab my needle, and I will knit across to the last 3 stitches. When I get to those 3 stitches, I will work a knit 2 together over 2 of the stitches, and then finish off with a knit 1. Just like when we did our increases, we did a knit front and back into the 1 stitch before the end, and then finished with the knit 1. We want to make sure we're not doing any shaping in that very last stitch. I'm to the last 3 stitches, and I will simply do my knit 2 together. So I take my right hand needle, going from left to right, I go into both of those stitches, and I simply knit those together. So what were 2 now have become 1, and I finished with my knit stitch. You will go ahead, knit the next row without any shaping, and then you'll pick up color B and work 2 rows without any shaping. Then you'll get back to color A, and you'll work a shaping row on the very first row of color A. Let me go ahead and get to the end of this row so I can show you how switching colors hasn't changed at all for this side of the wrap. And then I will show you once again how to do that decrease. As always, if you want a more detailed description of how to do the knit 2 together, go ahead and click on that link right there, and I'll show you how to do a more detailed knit 2 together. I'm at the end of my row. It's time for me to pick up my color B, and I will knit 2 full rows without any shaping with my color B. I'm to the last stitch of my color B, and it's time to switch back to color A. And just like before, I want to make sure I do my shaping on this first row of my color A. So I will get down to the last 3 stitches, and once again do my knit 2 together and then knit 1. So let's go ahead and get down to those last 3 stitches. And it doesn't matter that I have fewer than 60 stitches on here. It all works out the same. Here we go, we're to the last 3 stitches. I will do a knit 2 together, so I'm just going into both of those stitches. Yarn over just like I normally would do a knit, and I come out both of the stitches, and then I knit 1. So I have 1 fewer stitch than I had previously. Then I go ahead and I knit all the way back. So on and so forth. I continue doing this until I get down to 5 stitches, just like we began with, and then we will bind off. Once you bind off, you weave in your ends, and the rest is history. You get to wear your awesome wrap. Let me go ahead and get down to the last 5 stitches. You do the same. I'm down to 5 stitches and I just finished with my color A. Do I do another row of color B? Well, let's take a look at the wrap. When we started, we had 5 stitches here and we did down and back with 5. And then we had our color B, we went down and back with 5. And then we did our white, and that's when we increased to 6. So down here, if I have 5 right here, I am essentially on this row of my wrap. So I would say that I need to do 1 more of color B and then knit 1 row of white and then bind off. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I just finished with white. I will come up and I am going to just knit 2 rows with my color B. Switch here. And then I want to go ahead, I will work 1 row with white without any shaping, and then I'm going to bind off. And I think that that just really makes the 2 edges equal. So let's go ahead, we're going to pick up white. I can go ahead and cut the green, my color B at this point. I just want to make sure I leave at least 4, 5, 6 inches. I'm going to go ahead, I will knit 1 row with white, and then I will bind off, just so that I'm finishing off with a white so that both edges look the same. So here is my bind off, and I want to make sure that I don't bind off super tight, that it's a nice relaxed bind off. So I will go ahead, I will knit 2 stitches, and then I will have the back stitch jump up and over the front stitch and off. And make sure I don't pull that too tight. Knit 1 more stitch, have the back stitch jump up and over the front stitch. I can get that to work for me here. Knit 1 more, back stitch, jump up and over the front. Knit 1 more, back stitch, jump up and over the front. And then I snip my yarn, leaving 4 to 6 inches, give it a nice pull. Now I can go ahead and just continue pulling this off and it will be secure, but I also like to take my yarn and just thread it through that loop, just to make sure it's nice and secure. Now, as I set this down, let's set it this way, I have edges that look identical. You see how that works there? So that's what you could do. Plus, when you fold this in half, the edges meet up, okay? So that's how I would do the final bind off. Once you're done with that, all you need to do is weave in your ends. I'll show you how to do that, and then your wrap is complete. To weave in your ends, I like to use a bent tip tapestry needle, and I will simply come up here, and I'll start up here at the top, and I will just thread one of my tails onto my tapestry needle, and I am going to simply go and weave through my stitches up here at the top, and I'm going to come back on itself. Okay, give it a nice pull, just make sure they're all in there secure. And then I like to do just 1 more pass, and on my last pass coming through, I'm just going to thread through all of the stitches and the yarn itself. Feel like that's nice and secure. I can give that a snip, and that one's done. So we know that this side is the right side of our fabric because we marked it as the right side, and it's also really nice and neat stripes, right? Nothing is muddied. When we turn our work over, we have all of our color changes visible with our purl bumps. So let's go ahead and weave in our tail following along the purl bump on the wrong side of our wrap. I have this nice green here, so let's go ahead and follow this path of the green. So I will go into that white this way, and following the green around, I'll come through the white that way. You can see here that it goes underneath that one. See how it goes underneath both of those legs? And then it comes back through this white one. come around this way, comes underneath both of those greens, and then I come back through the white. So this is a really common way to weaving in your ends. It's just following along the path of the stitch itself, and it weaves in the end. Now, I like doing things this way, but I feel like it doesn't make it super secure. So when I get down here at the end, I like to just kind of come back through the yarn itself that I just thread through and pull my yarn through that just to give it a little bit of security. Once it's threaded through those, you can give it a snip, and that is nice and secure. You would do the same thing down here at this end, and your wrap would be complete, and it's ready for you to wear. I hope that this wrap did brighten up your day, and I can't wait to see what colors you choose to combine to make this a really fun wrap. It's a super simple project. It's really great for social knitting, and I can't wait to see yours. When you make yours, go ahead and tag me on social media so that way I can make sure I see it, all right? Thank you so much for joining me on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe so you're up to date whenever there's a new video released, and don't forget to smash that like button, as my kids say. Thank you so much. Bye. Hey, don't leave yet. I'm sure there are other videos here that you will enjoy. Go ahead and check out some of my knitting and crochet videos, as well as some of my crafting videos. You will love them, I promise. If you hit subscribe, you'll be up to date whenever there's a new video released. And as my kids say, don't forget to smash that like button. Bye. Everything you need to know about knitting or crochet can be found right here on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. Learn with Marley Bird. Visit youtube.com/Marley Bird.